All right, let's dive into the secret life of one of your body's most amazing microscopic marvels, the platelet. We're talking about your body's own first responders.
You know that feeling, right? You get a tiny paper cut, and for a second it bleeds, but then, almost like magic, it just stops. Well, that isn't magic. It's the work of a tiny, unsung hero that's constantly circulating in your bloodstream.
And that hero is the platelet. So today, we're going to meet these incredible first responders and really get to know what makes them tick.
So what exactly is a platelet? Well, first off, it's not even a full cell. The technical term is anucleated, which is just a fancy way of saying it has no nucleus. These are actually tiny little pieces that break off from these giant cells in your bone marrow. Just think about that. Your body is constantly making millions of tiny, purpose-built repair kits and sending them out on patrol.
And let's just look at their resume for a second. They are incredibly small, just 2 to 4 microns across. Their lifespan is short but intense, only about 7 to 10 days before they get replaced. And get this, in a single liter of your blood, you have a staggering 150 to 350 billion of them, just constantly on patrol, waiting for the call.
Now this is where it gets really cool. A platelet basically has 2 modes. In its calm resting state, it's just this smooth little disc, kind of coasting along with the flow. But the moment it gets a call to action, it completely transforms. It becomes spherical and grows these spiky little arms, ready to grab on and start plugging the leak.
So, what is that call to action? What's the bat signal that tells a platelet it's time to spring into action and where it needs to go? Let's take a look.
Well, the trigger is a protein called collagen. Now, normally collagen is hidden away. It's part of the structure underneath the super smooth inner lining of your blood vessels. But when you get a cut, that lining breaks, and suddenly that hidden collagen is exposed to the blood. For a platelet, seeing exposed collagen is the ultimate alarm bell.
So how does the platelet actually stick to the right spot? It's incredibly clever. It doesn't just randomly crash into the collagen. Instead, a special molecule acts as a go-between, kind of like a molecular bridge, that latches on to the exposed collagen first. Then, the platelet uses a specific receptor to dock perfectly onto that bridge. It's a precision-engineered first step to make sure they only stick where there's an actual emergency.
Okay, once that first platelet is docked, the mission begins, and this is where things get really intense. The platelet kicks off this lightning-fast chain reaction we call the clotting cascade.
The very act of docking is the trigger. It flips a switch. The platelet immediately goes through that shape change we saw earlier, and this is the crucial part. It opens up its internal storage units and releases a whole cocktail of powerful chemical signals right there at the scene.
2 of the most important chemicals it releases are ADP and thromboxane A2. You can think of these as the platelet's call for backup. They are basically shouting out to all the other platelets cruising by, telling them to activate. Get over here right now and join the effort. This is how you get a massive, amplified response in seconds.
And this right here is why understanding this process is so vital. A lot of life-saving anti-clotting drugs, what people often call blood thinners, work by targeting these exact steps. Drugs like clopidogrel essentially put earmuffs on the other platelets so they can't hear that ADP call for backup. It's modern medicine intervening with incredible precision at a microscopic level.
So as more and more platelets arrive and get activated, they start sticking to each other. They use a molecule called fibrinogen, which acts like a biological glue, linking them all together to form a soft, temporary plug. This is the initial seal over the wound.
But a soft plug isn't going to hold for long, right? You need to reinforce it. So for the final step, an enzyme called thrombin gets to work. It takes that sticky, soluble fibrinogen glue and converts it into a strong, insoluble fibrin mesh. It's like weaving a super strong net through and around all the platelets, creating a solid, stable cloth that really seals the deal.
Now, this system is absolutely incredible, but it's all about maintaining a very delicate balance. So what happens when that balance gets thrown off? Let's explore what happens when the system goes wrong.
Well, it can go wrong in 2 main ways. If you have too few platelets, that's a condition called thrombocytopenia, your body can't form clots effectively, putting you at risk for serious bleeding. On the flip side, if you have too many platelets, that's thrombocytosis, you run the risk of forming dangerous, unwanted clots inside your blood vessels when you don't need them.
And there are some pretty serious thresholds.
For instance, if your platelet count drops below 60 billion per liter, the risk of significant spontaneous bleeding becomes a major concern. That is a number that doctors watch very, very closely.
And the reasons for these imbalances are incredibly varied. Having too few platelets might be caused by things like leukemia or could be a side effect of chemotherapy. Having too many, on the other hand, can sometimes be a reaction to trauma, a chronic infection, or even something like an iron deficiency.
So how do we actually know what's going on with our platelets? Well, the answers are often hidden in plain sight on a standard blood test. Let's take a minute to decode some of those numbers. You see, besides just giving you the total count, a blood test gives other really key clues. MPV tells you the average size of your platelets. PDW measures how much their sizes vary from one another. And PCT tells you what percentage of your blood's total volume is actually made up of platelets.
Let's just focus on that first one for a second. MPV, the mean platelet volume. Why should anyone care if their average platelet size goes up? What is that number actually telling your doctor?
Well, a high MPV is a huge clue. It usually means your bone marrow is working overtime, basically cranking up the production line to pump out fresh new platelets. And it turns out these young platelets are naturally larger and more reactive than the older ones. So a high MPV often tells your doctor that your body is actively trying to compensate for recent bleeding, or that your platelets are being destroyed somewhere and need to be replaced, fast. So when you put it all together, from a tiny, smooth disc just silently circulating in your blood, to a spiky, activated warrior that kicks off a complex chemical cascade, all ending in a life-saving mesh, the platelet truly is one of the most remarkable and tireless first responders in the human body.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other microscopic heroes are working inside you right this very second, keeping you safe and healthy? The story of the platelet is just one of many incredible stories waiting to be told from deep within our own biology. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.